The time by Sagicor Bank is
7 o'clock, folks, on the Family Station, Love 101. Time for the Morning Watch with host Stokely Marshall.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you are overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the main watch, how are the parties and any independent candidates likely to fare in the pending local government elections? And in the second watch, would a stricter separation of powers, as in the USA, provide for better governance here in Jamaica? For our social media question, we ask, what are your thoughts on the possible outcomes of the pending local government elections? Share your responses on our Facebook or YouTube Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your comments later on in the program, but first, here's I quote.
This morning's I quote, "Write it on your heart that every day it is the best day in the year." Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Interesting indeed. The main watch will be back after this break.
I've got love in my heart and I'm feeling blessed.
Can I get a wow? Oh yeah, it's another World of Worship Wednesday inside Alive, 1 to 5, January 12th. Stick around for prayer blast at 2 o'clock. More prayer, more power. 2:15, we feature Dante Bowie as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m., we bring you the Alive Bible Challenge, ABC semi-finalist chit-chat. Let's get to know them ahead of the final rounds of matches. All this and more will come your way inside Alive, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. This Wow Wednesday with me, Sarah Ann the Chirpy One, on the Family Station, ranking number 4 on the extensive local radio landscape and number 1 in gospel, Love 101.
The mailbox resumes this Wednesday, January 12th, here on the Family Station. Tune in to the program Designed for Men, hosted by men with guests who are men, as we take a look at dollars and cents. Do you think women set and accomplish their goals more than men? What's the relationship between a man's goals and his money? And what are some things men should avoid doing in 2022? Join us as we discuss this and more in the mailbox, the first for the new year. This Wednesday, January 12th at 5:30 p.m. with hosts Kevin Bailey and Courtney Morrison, with guests Jaquan Gamble, financial advisor, and Delison Charles, certified life coach and behavioral therapist. And it will be happening here on Love 101, the Family Station.
We have a run them out when they got man them there. No matter what they look and they got them there. So Lord, we times when they on them there. And I didn't go plan me.
Love 101 listeners, you are the best. And Love 101 YouTube subscribers, who to take the prize? 10,000 no? Yes, Love 101 is saying thank you to each of you who have subscribed to our YouTube channel. And we're celebrating the 10,000 subscription mark. And if you have not yet subscribed, hop on over to our YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, and hit the big button, subscribe. It's as easy as that. See you! Woohoo!
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I am Stokely Marshall. Local government elections are in the air. Which parties are ready? Which parties are likely to have a large showing in these elections? We have the Jamaica Labour Party, the People's National Party, of course, more recently, the UIC, and the JPP. Who will be contesting, and do we think they will, make a large impact? There has been an issue with voter turnout in recent elections. How about independent candidates? What would the outcome of any local government elections to be held signal to the government, signal to the opposition, to the other parties, independent candidates, and to the society at large? We have online today to discuss this Kevin O'Brien Chan, social and political commentator, and Andrew Green, Christian political commentator. Mr. O'Brien Chan, Mr. Green, good day.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning up to all. Thanks for having me.
Good. Great having you, Mr. Green. I'm not sure if we have Mr. Chang as yet.
Yes, I'm here. You heard
O'Brien,
me?
Mr. O'Brien Chang, rather. Mr. O'Brien Chang?
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Oh, okay, great. Now, the role and purpose of local government elections. Mr. O'Brien Chang, perhaps you can assist us. We know why we have them, but just as a reminder to listeners, if you could indicate to the listeners the role and purpose of local government elections.
Well, as it says, local, it's to handle the affairs on the ground. Parliament makes laws, looks after the country as a whole on a big picture. But on the ground, you need water and roads fixing this kind of stuff. You need people on the ground who can do the work, and that's why we elect councillors. They work in tandem with the national government, but the day-to-day event, so to speak, that needs to be looked after. You need people there, and so luckily we're in a democracy. We elect which parties, council, they think will do the best job in making our day-to-day life tolerable.
Understood, sir. Understood. And any comments, Mr. Green?
Yes, again, thanks for having me. First, being on your program. Yes, thanks. And thanks for the invite. Yes, I agree with Kevin. And of course, Kevin is a very respected commentator and he knows his stuff. And I agree, yes, we need the local government authorities to be on the ground to assist the central government in the governance of the people. So yes, the local government is indeed very important to us.
Indeed. And further to that, is the local government seen or still seen as not being quite as important as central government? Is it seen as an appendage? Is it seen as really having as great a role? We know that they're attending to local affairs as opposed to affairs on a grander national scale. But how do you think local government is perceived? And sometimes, depending on which administration might be in power, you will have persons making comments as to which particular government or party gives greater credence to local government. Mr. Brian Chang, firstly, you?
I don't think the reputation is that great. I don't think there's much difference between the parties. The reputation is not great. The councils are often seen as, how should I put it? I don't mean to be derogatory, but I'm giving the impression that they're less educated than the national government. And as I can, I'm just giving my the frank opinion here, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody, but you have to speak the realities you see and hear, you know? Even the language used when you hear counselors and stuff speak, they don't tend to articulate as well as the parliament, you know? And the reputation is not great. The feeling is they don't work that well. And sometimes they're just there to eat the food, as people say. I don't know how we can improve it, but I do know that that's the impression, that people see it as not as good as it could be, frankly. And that I know where I live. Maybe my views are colored because where I live in Manchester, right? And the local government here does not have a good reputation. We've had a couple of big scandals down here, and we have a lot of problems with water and stuff. And we see these things, and we feel that it could be a big improvement. So like I said, you're colored by where you live. Other places may have a different impression, but that's the impression. On the other hand, I guess it's necessary, the parliamentarians are not there all the time. They can't be, at least the council, the councillors are they have a fixed office, and there's a mayor, and if you have problems, you can go there and quarrel and complain. But my opinion in Manchester here, they're not really highly thought of, and my impression is I just am colored and prejudiced because of Manchester. Maybe other places they're more respected, but I used to have a radio show and hear people call in and you hear the same complaint. The place dirty, the road them no fixed, and water, all these local things that you would want the day to day are just not done as well as it should be. I don't know how your experiences are.
And that is unfortunate because I think their role is so important. Mr. Green, any comments?
Yes, Sir Stokely. Many persons would not take the local government election seriously, as they do the general elections. The hype that is there for the general elections. People are on the ground more. You see the ads on radio, on TV, you hear them on radio and so forth. A push, and if you look at the budget, I think you'll see where for the general elections, much more is pumped therein because this is governance. We're talking about governance of the country, central government, and so as a result, more effort is pushed there. Yes, as Kevin says, the reputation is not so great. You watch TV, you see some of the language that is used, the vitriol that emanate when these guys come together. It's really shameful. And as our elected representatives, they ought to be setting an example, even in Parliament. And this is broadcast to the wider society. In a society that is so violent, our members of Parliament need to do much better. So I'm saying yes, in a nutshell, the local government is still seen as being not that is as important as central government.
Hold that thought, Mr. Green, because we are upon a break. We want to look at some other things, for example, how local government elections are probably used as a sort of gauge as to how the government is performing. But stay with us, listeners. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
This is Love 101. It's 7:15.
It's time to take your home somewhere unexpected. And at Active Home Center, it's our job to help you do just that. With our wide range of home finishes and on-trend styles, you'll find a great selection for your space. Shop tiles in different styles, contemporary bathroom fixtures, kitchen and appliances, the latest in furniture, lighting, and so much more. Visit our showroom at 84 Constance Spring Road or online at activehomecenter.com. Your one-stop shop for home finishes. Active Home Center. More savings, more choices.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. We are in the main watch, and we are looking at how are the parties and any independent candidates likely to fare in the pending local government elections. How are the parties and any independent candidates likely to fare in the pending local government elections? Our guests are Mr. Kevin O'Brien Chang, social and political commentator, and Andrew Green, Christian political commentator. Just before the break, a very interesting point was being made by Mr. Green. But Mr. Green, I want to raise this issue. Are local government elections viewed as a test of how voters see the political parties in between the national general elections? Is it a way of testing the water to see how the population thinks about the government and the opposition, the parties and candidates that there are? We now have as well 2 additional registered political parties. We have the United Independent Congress and the Jamaica Progressive Party, in addition to the JLP and the PNP. Mr. Green, your thoughts?
Yes, thank you for the question. I am thinking, quite frankly, that the political parties use these local government elections to gauge their chances of doing well, or the lack thereof in upcoming general elections. Hence the reason why a lot of, inverted commas, politics is being played with when it is being staged. Of course, it's constitutionally due every 4 years, and rarely we see that it occurs then. But then I'm saying that when you look at the figures, because of course our politicians are very deliberate, they are strategic, and they should be, and they look at what happens in the past, for historical references, and they would have seen that the incumbent, and Kevin can help me here if I've heard, but the incumbent normally would do well in local government elections. For example, in the last local government election that we had, we found that the incumbent party did well, and won most of the divisions. And so the government, yes, they look. The independent parties coming up, I don't think they stand much of a chance, because traditionally in Jamaica, persons are either PNP or JLP, labor right or socialists, as it were, and the independent candidates do not get much of a chance. So I do not think, and it's very unfortunate, because I think that if the parties are not doing well, are not following the mandates, that others should be given a chance to come in and try to do better.
Mr. O'Brien Chan?
Well, I agree, first of all, that it's a pity, but the reality that the small parties have no chance. We've never elected a single MP from another party since independence. And I think there have been 1 or 2 councillors elected independent, but they have tended to be from one of the parties that get vexed themselves running as independent, And I really, if we could transform Jamaican politics, if we could get even 1 parliamentarian from not from JLP or PNP, but the people just refuse it. It's, it's a democracy.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true. The incumbent normally wins, and it tends to be a real live poll on the government of the day. That's true. The incumbent normally wins, and if an incumbent loses, the chances of winning the next election are slim. It shows they're very unpopular. But the last poll we had, John, I think 2021, but August, showed the JLP on a popular vote even more ahead of the PNP than during the general election when they won 49 seats. I don't think anything drastically has changed since that poll. And frankly, if you look at the polls, the PNP will be lucky to win a single parish. The poll suggests, the last poll suggests like JLP clean sweep. No doubt there'll be, I presume, if a local government election is called, there'll be another poll from Don Anderson and such. But that's how it stands right now, that the JLP is heavily favored to win all parishes. It's happened before, happened in 2012. The PNP won the general election early, and then they had the parish council election a little later, and they won every parish, So it is, polls suggest that's going to happen again.
What are some of the issues that you think are live on the minds of voters going into the upcoming local government elections, in your views, respectively? Do you think that there are any particular issues that they consider to be something that will motivate them to vote or not to vote? Andrew Green, starting with you.
Yes, thanks. There are a lot of things on the minds of Jamaicans. Of course, the COVID virus. And as a matter of fact, that was why the elections, the local government elections, would have been shifted from when it was constitutionally due to, I think, maybe February month end. I think the leader of the House, the leader of government business in the Senate, Kamina Johnson Smith, I think they had their their declarations in that it would have been put off, but because of the COVID virus. So that is very daunting on us right now. A lot of persons are thinking on that. They are not really per se looking at local government issues, but the COVID, the crime and violence in the country, the government doesn't seem to have a handle on how to cauterize the crime monster, and successive governments. The PNP has had its struggles as well. So those are some of the main things that are challenging the electorate right now. Yes, roads, people need, infrastructure developments, such as roads, good roads, water, the markets, etc. But I think the main things on the mind of the average electorate is that the COVID situation, the crime and violence, jobs, people needing jobs, housing. Yeah, these are the things that would be on the front burner for many electorate.
Interesting. So it seems as if you're pointing to national issues or issues that affect the nation as a whole as filtering into how persons may vote at the ballot box in a local government election.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes, indeed, because these are the bread and butter issues now. Of course, the Prime Minister has been adamant and has been beseeching the populace to take the COVID vaccine so that we can get back to normality. You cannot have a shutdown again because it has hurt the economy terribly. So he is advocating for all and sundry to take the vaccine. That is a very big thing on the table, not only nationally, but when you look in the churches and elsewhere, even if you listen to sports, the issue with Novak Djokovic in the Australian Open, he's a defending champion and he's not vaccinated. Not sure if he's anti-vax. And they want to run him out of the country to say, hey, if you are not vaccinated, you can't come here. As popular as you are, as famous as you are, you need to get vaccinated. So these are some of the issues that we are grappling now in Jamaica in 2022.
Mr. Brian Chang, your thoughts?
I agree on the big point being made. Of course, we have to, until COVID cools down, Mr. Holness said no election, So we're talking about when COVID cools down, which hopefully will be soon. The people are looking at the local government issues about, dirty town, dirty, not garbage not being collected, and dirty streets and stuff. But they're still looking at it from a national point of view. And crime is a big issue. He mentioned jobs, but in the past, jobs has been an issue, but not recently, not now. Because of the call centers and stuff, young people have more jobs than ever in Jamaica, in my experience. You don't hear young people complaining much they can't get jobs anymore. If a better paying job, the jobs are there. But crime is a big issue in Jamaica. Been there for 30 years. And people look at the decline in voting, and this is my personal belief. People want to feel safe, and the government are not doing enough to make them feel safe. And the state of emergencies, for example, from 2010, the first one was called, we saw a big drop in murder. The people then said they want the state of emergency extended, 71% of the populace. And they were voted down. Fast forward to 2018, another state of emergency, whoop, another big drop in crime. They're voted down again. 71% of the populace, the polls show, want state of emergency is extended, right? And the people are saying, why should we bother to vote? 71% of us, more than any party, are demanding states of emergency to feel safe, and they keep being voted down. So if we're in a democracy, and the vast majority of people want policies to make them feel safer, and we can't get them, why should we waste our time voting? It's a reality. In a democracy, there's a saying by Napoleon that when people think long and hard about something, they're generally correct. The masses, right? Yes, they can have things like the vaccine which come on here. A lot of people don't want the vaccine, but it's a new issue. People have had time to absorb it. But state of emergency is 10 years now. People have looked at the murder, seen something that has worked to cut murders when they're put in place, and yet they're keeping voted down because we have a system that 2/3 of the Senate has to agree, and it's 13-8. So unless one of the senators they don't vote party line, you can't get it. And then we had the absurdity, the most recent state of emergency. 2 parliamentarians of the PNP and 3 of the senators. That's all that voted. The rest declined to vote, hiding behind the others because they know if they are seen to vote against something the mass of people want, they will be unpopular. But so the few that voted were able to top the will of the people. And people are saying, what kind of democracy is this? What kind of democracy is it when we want to feel safe? We tell you what we want as a people, and we cannot get it. And 5 people, 2 parliamentarians and 3 senators voted down. Can you blame people when they don't want to vote?
I think I wanted to see if I could have more comments, gentlemen, but I think we're totally out of time. I want to thank you, Kevin Brian Chang and Andrew Green, for being with us in this first watch. Thank you for your time and for your thoughts. Listeners, stay with us. We'll be right back on the watch.
Now with no processing fees and no down payment, it's time to open the door to your own sweet home. The time by JN Bank is
7:30, folks.
Hello.
Hello?
Goodbye.
Goodbye? What are you doing?
I'm saying hello to peace of mind. and goodbye to worry.
Oh, I'd like to say that too.
Well, with Guardian Life's new Ultimate Provider, you can secure your medical expenses in the event of critical illness ahead of time and benefit from their investment portfolio too.
Wow, so it's hello peace of mind.
And goodbye worry with Guardian Life's new Ultimate Provider. For more information, contact 888-367-5433 or talk to one of our representatives. Guardian Life. Live secure. Live easy.
Hi, I'm Gabriella, and I am 9 years old. I attend St. Richard's Primary, and I am looking forward to going back to school. Children, as some of us go back to face, please remember to stay safe, be wise, sanitize, and wash your hands as often as you are able to. And bring your lotion too. And remember, children, to keep your mask on at all times, except when you're eating, of course. God is always with you. Just call on Him when you get scared. He will come to your rescue. Have a great time. And yes, stay safe. This was a message from me, Gabriella, and Love 101 FM, the family station.
Planning to sit the May-June CXC exams privately? Register with Overseas Examinations Commission before the late registration deadline, Friday, January 21. Visit our Kingston office or Montego Bay office to complete your application form or send an email to help@overseasexams.org.jm. Follow our social media pages at Overseas Exams for more details. Remember, if you plan to sit the May-June CXC exams privately, the late registration deadline is January 21.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Let's take a look now at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And in the major daily newspapers this morning and other happenings, we have in the Gleaner, changes implemented to improve building approvals, says Kingston Mayor. That's in the Gleaner. We turn to the Observer. We have here a number of stories. One of them is Review Junction Road Contract. Public Defender urges those and many other stories in both major daily newspapers. Coming up next, we'll read for you some of the feedback from our Facebook and WhatsApp question, which is, what are your thoughts on the possible outcomes of the pending local government elections? If you haven't done so yet, leave your responses on our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM, Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp. Comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
Love 101 listeners, you are the best. And Love 101 YouTube subscribers, who to take the prize, 10,000 ono. Yes, Love 101 is saying thank you to each of you who have subscribed to our YouTube channel. And we're celebrating the 10,000 subscription mark. And if you have not yet subscribed, hop on over to our YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, and hit the big button, subscribe. It's as easy as that. See you! Woohoo!
Here's a vaccination message from Love 101 FM. When taking the AstraZeneca vaccine, you will need to take 2 doses administered 8 to 14 weeks apart. The Pfizer vaccine, 2 doses administered approximately 3 weeks apart, while the Johnson & Johnson is just a single dose. My name is Deidre Parchment, encouraging you to get vaccinated. Let's get vaccinated and get back to life.
The mailbox resumes this Wednesday, January 12, here on the Family Station. Tune in to the program Designed for Men, hosted by men with guests who are men, as we take a look at dollars and cents. Do you think women set and accomplish their goals more than men? What's the relationship between a man's goals and his money? And what are some things men should avoid doing in 2022? Join us as we discuss this and more in the mailbox, the first for the new year, this Wednesday, January 12 at 5:30 p.m. with hosts Kevin Bailey and Courtney Morrison, with guests Jaquan Gamble, financial advisor, and Delison Charles, certified life coach and behavioral therapist. And it will be happening here on Love 101, the family station.
We ever run them out when they got man them there. No matter man the look and the chat them there. So load with times when the hand them there. All of the devil plan me.
Come back here to this is the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Stokely Marshall. Let's join Shivani for a look at how our Facebook and WhatsApp friends answered today's question. What are your thoughts on the possible outcomes of the pending local government elections? Shivani.
Good morning, Uncle Stokely. Nobody knows the outcome of this election. For that, people is more concerned about COVID, not about election. So only God knows the result. But whatever be the result, I do hope that God will be in it.
Interesting. Any other comments or thoughts, Shivani, at this time, or that is it for now? That appears to be it for now.
That's it for now, Stokely.
Well, we move right into the second watch. The questions we're asking today in relation to governance, separation of powers. The question is raised from time to time, would a stricter separation of powers as exists in the USA provide for better governance here in Jamaica? A clear separation of personnel in the executive from the legislature. For example, in Jamaica, the Prime Minister is also a member of Parliament. However, in the United States of America, the President has no legislative role and has no constituency as would a Prime Minister here in Jamaica. They have a pretty interesting system. It seems to work for them for the most part, but then so does our system work. It works for us for the most part too. So the question is, which is better? What are the issues with ours that would make us want to have that other system? We have online this morning to have a discussion around this. O'Dane Brooks, research consultant, public policy professional, UNESCO, and I believe ambassador and a youth activist. They also employed to the ministry with responsibility for industry and commerce. We also have online Nadine Spence, social and political commentator. Good day, Nadine Spence. Good day, O'Dane Brooks. How are you both?
Good morning, doing well.
Okay, thank you.
Great having you both. Now, first of all, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Brooks, if you will, define for us the term separation of powers in Westminster model as we have here in Jamaica, on the one hand, vis-a-vis the model used in the United States of America and other nations that have used a system like theirs.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. You have asked a pretty interesting question, but in a nutshell, in the basic sense of the concept of separation of powers, the scholarship and the scholars ideate that within government there are really three arms of government. So we have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So under the Westminster system, where the separation of powers operate, it is really somewhat a fusion of powers, because what happens is that the three arms of government I would have just outlined, they are not strictly separate in the sense where you have a clear separation with the judiciary, but there is some fusion with the executive and the legislature. So as you mentioned, the prime minister heads the executive and other members from the governing party. But what you find is that those same representatives also form the government benches in the legislature. And so in that instance, with the Westminster approach, you have that kind of fusion of powers. But with the presidential system in the United States, what you have is somewhat a clear distinction in terms of the three branches of government. So those in the executive, you will not usually find them in the White House. And so you can see that there is a clear distinction between the different branches of government. So in
You
total,
mean you won't find them in Congress or Senate? I think that's what you mean.
that is correct. So in totality, the separation of powers, it really comes down to the extent to which the three branches of government really operate independently, and that is a sacred principle within constitutions that observes this notion of separation of powers.
Very interesting. Thank you, sir. Nadine Spence, any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to explain it within the context of our democracy. So in our practice of Westminster, the legislature, well, the judiciary we know is the court and the court system, right? The legislature we know is the parliament and how the parliament acts. And then the executive would be the cabinet and the ministers. And the problem with ours is that the MPs serve as ministers. And so there is that, what Odin spoke about, the fusion of those two functions of government, where the legislature is also the executive. And the idea is that no one body should exercise control over the making and execution of our laws. So it is believed that where each power is separate, those who make the law, those who execute the law, and those who put the law into action, that when there is separation of the powers, of those powers, then it makes for a better democracy, I guess, a more accountable democracy, and it's less likely that people will use the democracy to serve their own particular purposes, to serve their own ends. I guess the question that we must ask is, in places where there is clear separation of powers, as perhaps exampled by the United States, is it that their democracy is devoid of challenges, and does it work in a more superior way to our borrowed democracy or inherited? Because we have to remember that both of these democracies emerged out of a particular European context, and that countries like ours, which were colonized and ruled by foreign powers, have had to have in a way inherited this practice of democracy. So I mean, it's an assessment. And are we satisfied with how things are unfolding in the United States? For example, do we think a separation of powers has made for a better democracy in their case?
Nadine Spence, hold that thought, because we are upon a break. We will drill down into this some more. Stay with us, listeners. We'll be right back with the Morning Watch.
This is Love 101, the family station, 745.
Do what? Nobody light it. What, Marcia? Do what? No light what? Nobody light it. You know, sister, we in a dry season. Plus breeze a blow. You are set we up for disaster.
Disaster? What kind of disaster?
Bushfire, Joe. Bushfire. If that the fire they catch and spread, we can lose everything. House, land, car, gone. See a carelessness. Nobody light it.
You know what, true? I feel with duty for protect life and property.
Yes. Me glad you respect the warning.
This message was brought to you by Jamaicans Against Bushfires. Jab, plan, protect, prevent.
You're invited to listen to Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. We'll give you tips on how to make your money count, how to save, and how to grow your worth. It's all inside Dollars and Cents, brought to you by BPM Financial Limited, taking you higher. That's Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back. So we are in the second watch, and we are looking at the topic in relation to the separation of powers. That is, would a stricter separation of powers, as in the USA, provide for better governance here in Jamaica? And who are our guests? O'Dane Brooks, search consultant, public policy professional, UNESCO, and I believe ambassador and youth activist. He's also employed to the ministry with responsibility for industry and commerce. We also have online Nadine Spence, social and political commentator. Miss Spence, before the break, you touched on a very, very, very important point. And that has a lot to do with, notwithstanding that the USA may have a stricter separation, at the end of the day, does it make a difference? Or let me not say it that way. To use your word, does it mean that they are devoid? Are they devoid of challenges and issues with how they run their own democracy? And you touched on something, the history that led them to have the system that they have versus us here in Jamaica. Please continue, Nadine Spence.
Yeah, and I think it's important as well to say, I don't know why you are having the conversation, okay, but I think in the context of a cabinet reshuffle, where people are looking on at the ministers that have no, especially in this case, the Attorney General, there are a number of people who are saying perhaps if we had a cabinet that was more made up of professionals, so that, for example, the Minister of National Security would not be a medical doctor, but would be somebody who is trained in the execution and management of security issues, of strategic security management. Perhaps if that was a professional with years of service and with experience in the area of managing crime. Perhaps if our health minister was not a PhD in whatever, but was somebody who was trained in health and the management of health services. You know, perhaps if we had people who were professionals in their area, in the United States, for example, usually the Secretary of Education is a long-standing educator with years of experience, who's perhaps done a PhD or a doctorate in education. Perhaps if those were the people who made up the cabinet, who made up the ministers, who were in charge of the department, then we would have a more efficiently run government, and perhaps the legislature would do its work of making laws, reviewing laws, updating laws. They would be left to do that work in a more direct and in a more targeted way. And as I said, that's where the fusion is. And so that's an important conversation to have, you know. Does it make a difference in the grand scheme of things for the ministries to be peopled by long-standing professionals? Or are we at a disadvantage because the people who head our ministries are for the most part people who are professional politicians who might not be trained in the area they're asked to lead. For me, that's the question that is relevant to the conversation at this point.
Yes, yes, yes. You see, we often hear the comment, as you alluded to or made actually, that we have members of parliament who, when they get a ministerial role, they are spending a lot of time heading their relevant ministries, hardly having any time to pay attention to their constituencies. And there's also the concern that sometimes the minister is really not, their skill set may not necessarily match the area that they are asked to lead. However, isn't there a practice, Nadine Spence, that over time we try to do our best to match skills of the relevant members of parliament or senators, for that matter, with the area that they are leading? So oftentimes you will have someone heading a ministry who may have some sort of background in that area, albeit that they may not have a background which squarely fits it, but at least it is, for the want of a better word, somewhat of a best fit. And in some cases, they'll actually have someone of a particular profession heading a particular area. Think of Ministry of Justice, Delroy Chuck, Queen's Counsel, persons like that. For example, we have had ministers of health who are in fact doctors. So Nadine Spence, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question for us to think through. It's not an automatic assumption that because you are trained in an area, you would be a better steward in that area. It's not automatic, right? Because in many cases, I think leading these ministries requires a mindset, a mindset that I think incorporates strategic thinking, understanding how our governance processes work, and so on. And that might not necessarily reside in somebody who is specifically trained in an area. Perhaps the experiential knowledge that comes from immersing yourself in the space and then learning the particularities of it, perhaps, takes people much further than the person who is trained. So perhaps what you need is somebody who is trainable and who has the capacity to learn and study the area and engage with it. But think about it. In the last 2 years, we've had Carl Samuda moving from education. It's education.
Yes, he was there at one point, yes.
He was at education, then he moved to agriculture. And now he's at, is what now? Social security, or is that where
No, he's not. Well, I can check it for you in a moment because of the
I don't
reshuffle.
remember, but so the question that some people might ask is, what are the skill sets and what is the knowledge base that would give one person, the capacity to move, we would want to believe, with ease and with ease, to lead those three very different spaces? What kind of skill set, what kind of knowledge base would it take for that?
And you might want to remember too that with someone such as Carl Samuda, he was indeed Minister of Labor and Social Security. You want to recall as well that Mr. Samuda is a highly seasoned politician and statesman, and someone with vast experience working in different areas. So I take your point though, Nadine Spence, I do take your point there. You are through with your point, Miss Nadine Spence?
Yes, I am.
Odin, Your comments, sir, on the points Miss Nadine Spence just made. Any thoughts?
I would generally agree with the sentiments that usually what we find is that individuals are appointed to ministerial portfolio, not so much a reflection of their general competency and knowledge of the bureaucracy and knowledge of management and strategic thinking, but it is more so who the prime minister at the time have confidence in, or who is supposedly loyal and would have been integral in getting the party into power. So I think that that conversation has evolved, but I don't necessarily think that having years of expertise or being an expert in a particular field necessarily equate to you doing a good job in a ministry. What I think we have to do is to look at our own nuances, our own challenges, and to structure our system so that our accountability frameworks can work. Because we do have a lot of accountability mechanisms, but the question might be asked, how effective are these? So we have uh, various committees of parliament, we have commissions of parliament, but in terms of the political will to oversee the extent to which these bodies, when they make recommendations, when they produce reports, how often are these reports implemented and action taken? So I think if we can get our focus on how to improve that side of governance in terms of accountability, we can improve our stocks in terms of policy performance as well as the perception of mismanagement and misappropriations within the Jamaican context.
Very interesting, very interesting. And in terms now of where we go forward, do you think the average Jamaican really is going to be concerned per se with whether we have a stricter separation of powers, or whether we, as in the USA, or whether we continue our Westminster style of government? Is it something on the minds of the average voter? Or is it that persons only seem to be concerned with these things if, for example, there is a problem? Some huge problem that makes it come to the fore. Your thoughts, Odane Brooks, followed by Nadine Spence.
I think it concerns the voters, but what the voters are particularly keen on is to see their tax dollars working for them. But for us to arrive at the tax dollars working, we have to look at the systems that we have in place to ensure there is greater accountability and there is probity as to how governments go about managing our public finances. So it entails several things that will ultimately manifest in good governance, which ultimately that is what the average voter is concerned with.
Nadine Spence?
I always like to have this conversation and say we must put our public servants and our civil servants into this conversation, because we must ask ourselves what the category of people available for service to the nation at the level of the civil service look like. Who is our permanent secretary? Who is the administrative head of the ministry? And what does our planning strategy as a nation look like? And what we want from the government, what Jamaicans should say is we want to know what is, when the government goes into power and takes over power, we want to know what their plans are for each ministry. We want to know what each minister says he or she is going to do. We don't just want a manifesto from the government before election. We want a month after, 2 months after each minister takes office, each minister to come to us and say, this is what we are going to deliver. We're going to give them time to become familiar with the ministry and to come back and give us a plan. That's one. Two, we want to know how the plan is going to be executed and how it's going to be financed. And then over the period of time of that minister's service, we want regular feedback as to what has been happening with the execution of the plan. We want to know how you've been spending our money and how efficient you've been. And we want to know how the other people in the ministry that you are leading are performing. Because Jamaicans will become interested if they know how the conversation relates to their day-to-day life.
Understood. Have to leave it there today. Nadine Spence, as well as Ordain Brooks and Carl Samuda, remains at the Ministry of Labour and National Security in the reshuffled cabinet. Thank you, Nadine Spence and Ordain Brooks. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us tomorrow to look at other topical and controversial issues. Visit our Love 101 FM page and YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and other Love 101 FM programs. And of course, download our app, listen to us, the #1 gospel station in Jamaica. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and to our guests. Handing over to Siobhan Blair.
It's 8:02. Welcome now to the program Forward in Faith, brought to you by